Good evening and welcome. The time is 6 p.m. and I'd like to call to order the April 14th, 2021 Keizer Planning Commission. City Recorder has noted the attendance. We have two absent tonight, Commissioner Hostler and Commissioner Keizer. I'd like to take a quick moment and invite Jessica Davidson up. Jessica is part of the Volunteer Coordinating Committee. She's here to talk to us about volunteer appreciation. For the commissioners, if you would, take a look at your mics, make sure they're all on. Mine was off this morning when I got here, so just make sure they're on. Jessica.
Good evening, and thank you all for being here. I'm going to read a proclamation to you. But first, I wanted to say thank you for serving our community. I don't know why it's doing that.
Yeah, probably stay back a little.
Whereas a basic ingredient forming the foundation of the city of Keizer is volunteerism. Are you the tech guy? No? Okay. Upon incorporation in 1982, the motto was adopted: pride, spirit, and volunteerism. Almost every facet of our community life is supported by volunteerism, and I don't know why it's still doing that. I don't have anything on me. Maybe I'll use a different mic if that's okay.
We can try that. Let's see.
Okay.
Want to try this one? You'll have to. Hello. Oh, I don't. That one
Should
doesn't.
I just sit in his seat for a second,
That
Frank?
one doesn't come on. Oh, that was not plugged
Is
in.
that okay?
Which? Where?
Could I sit in Frank's seat?
Sure. Yes,
Okay.
I think that one works. Yep.
Okay. Sorry. Makes it a little bit better so you guys don't have to hear that crazy feedback. Whereas many residents of this community contribute to the well-being of fellow residents and the welfare of our neighbors in the Mid-Willamette Valley and Santiam Canyon by giving generously of their time and energy. And whereas many volunteers assist the city of Keizer in performing a multitude of duties, often providing services that would otherwise be reduced or non-existent. Many of the volunteers serve in an advisory role to the city council on our boards, commissions, and task forces. And whereas Keizer volunteers faithfully show up to help whenever there is a need, this has been especially evident in the COVID pandemic, 2020 Santiam Canyon wildfire, and the 2021 ice storm. And whereas the city of Keizer values every one of our many Keizer volunteers and wishes to extend our deepest appreciation to all, and now, therefore, I, Kathy Clark, I'm not Kathy, Mayor of the city of Keizer, together with the Keizer City Council assembled in regular session, do hereby proclaim that the month of April 2021 as a Volunteer Recognition Month, and ask that all people of Keizer to express their thanks to the many volunteers who continue to help and serve in our community. And that is the proclamation, and then she signs it there at the bottom. So I'm gonna grab the cookies and give them to you guys. And again, thank you for your service to our community.
Use your napkins to pick up the cookies, just so we're being COVID aware. Thank you, Jessica. And I think one of the things that's important to point out, one of the things the Volunteer Coordinating Committee has done in the last 4 or 5 months has been putting together a series of documents that will help. I'm good, thank you.
You're good.
Jane gets all the cookies.
Have to figure out something better than cookies. Do y'all have any other suggestions?
Fried Brussels sprouts.
Fruit.
Have you had the ones from Tapper? They're awesome.
Wait, I do, because I want
wait.
to see if there's a peanut butter one. Yeah, I
Thank
love
you,
that
Jessica.
one. Thank you.
Well, I guess since nobody else is taking one off.
Is enough to be proclaimed? All right, well, that's good.
Thank you.
They're volunteers.
Now, there aren't all chocolate. I think there's some, there's
oatmeal.
an oatmeal cookie in there
Yeah,
with
there's some on
raisins. You want to try one?
Oatmeal raisins are the Decepticon of cookies. You think you're getting a chocolate chip one,
I know.
and all of a sudden you're
There's
just like,
I
what
think
is
there's
this?
oatmeal raisin on there. See if he wants to, one of those, because he's allergic to chocolate.
It looks like it's crazy or raisin on there. You're allergic to chocolate? Yes, I don't know why I survived this long. Wow.
Well, see, I don't like chocolate, so most of the cookies I don't really care about. Yeah. Yeah, I like cheesecake.
So as I was saying, I think
snickerdoodles.
one of the cool things the volunteer coordinating committee is doing, and the mayor and Councilor Kohler have been working on this, and others, is there's a series of documents now on the various community pages that talk a little bit about what the individual committees do. There's a list of like the Roberts rules and things like that. So it's kind of a really good opportunity for folks that are coming on to commissions or boards or councils to familiarize themselves with the process, because many of us come in here that don't necessarily understand kind of how all that stuff boils down. So there's a lot more to come with that, I expect, right, Debbie?
Actually, no, I think I've pretty much got it for all of the committees now.
Okay.
It varies by the page you're on, because the purpose will be different for each one. And like the Parks Board has like the master plan, or not the master plan, but some SDC methodology, that sort of thing. The Planning Commission one didn't change too much, because you have the video training that Shannon gives. And there's another video training that is done, that Shannon did for the other committees. And so that's on the other committee pages. But if you think of anything that you would like to see on there, just let me know and I'll see what I can do to get it on there.
Great. And those videos are great. I mean, our city attorney is a brilliant public speaker. And if you run out of your Tylenol no, I'm just kidding. It is very informative, very good information. So, all right. Any other yes, sir.
Thank you, Chair Lawyer. That's on, yeah? Check.
Can you hear me now?
Check. Can you hear me now? Okay. I just wanted to say thank you sincerely as a staff person here. The Planning Commission has always been great to work with over the last few years that I've been coming. And I know that we ask a lot of planning commissioners as staff. We give you guys thick packets of information. And I really just do want to echo, we really appreciate having quality people that are engaged in our community, that are engaged in spending the time to do the work, and to listen to what's being said, but then also to look at what we need as a city. And so I just wanted to say thank you, because it really is, as the staff person that comes, like, I enjoy coming to the Planning Commission. I enjoy working with you all, and I enjoy hearing your feedback and your guidance, and really you do a great job. So just thank you very much.
Well, I think Commissioner Grants, Commissioner Saldivar, and I were kind of commenting in the living room earlier. This is kind of a fun commission. I mean, a lot of planning commissions struggle with topics and some of the issues that come in, and we get to tackle and talk about some really cool things. Not chickens, but we talked about the sign code and how relatively unscathed that one came out a few years back, and despite Nate's extraordinary video editing capabilities. But anyways, yeah, it's a pleasure to serve on this commission with you all. Good stuff. Anything else? Any other thoughts on volunteerism? And thanks, Debbie, for putting up with all of us. It's like herding cats in a rainstorm sometimes.
Well, this committee's not near as bad as some of my others.
Well, you do a great job of coordinating all of it, and I know I appreciate it. The gentle reminders and the sometimes not so gentle reminders
Yes,
are very
my
helpful. So,
Yes.
all right, moving on. Do we have the March 10th, 2021 minutes? Debbie sent those out with our packets. Do we have a motion on the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented by Commissioner Grants and a second by Commissioner Watson. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right. Motion passes unanimously. Debbie, do we have anybody signed up tonight for?
No, these people are, you didn't sign up, did you, Wayne? Yeah. We have two people from the Traffic Safety Bikeways Pedestrian Committee. They're going to start coming to, or at least monitoring the meetings, to see if they have anything that, if we do anything that they want to be part of. Isn't that about right?
I think that's a sneaky way to get us into the planning commission.
Okay.
At least we can always count on a crowd now.
Yeah. Wayne's always entertaining. I like having Wayne around. Okay, well, moving on. So we have nobody signed up. So next item, we have the public hearing on the Keizer Development Code, Section 2.0 130, the River Cherry Overlay District, RCOD, and Section 2.316, Infill Development Standards. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on that at 6:09. Mr. Witham.
Thank you, Chair Lawyer. And then I also wanted to just confirm, in addition, between when we set the agenda out and communicating with Debbie, we also have 3 additional sections that we are bringing that we identified as needing some minimal tweaks, which is identified in our staff report. So that's section 1.200 definitions, 2.432 cottage cluster development, and 3.107 partitions. Those are almost like Scrivener corrections. There's not substantive changes, but I'll kind of walk through those as we go. But I did want to make sure we kind of clarify that piece for, we're technically recommending we change those. Yes, sir.
Is there any impact to the subdivision code?
No, the language in the subdivision code section is more general.
Okay.
So it didn't specifically call out 2.316, so we didn't have to change that one.
So I guess for procedural, we don't have any issues in terms of including these since they weren't necessarily notified.
Sure, they were notified. We did update the FAPA. It just didn't make its way into the agenda.
Okay.
That was I missed that on when the agenda went out.
Not a problem.
So, okay. So with that, the packet was extremely thick this month, and I apologize. It seems like the packets always are extremely thick that I sent to you all. Hopefully the red line portions came through and you saw that, oh, it's really thick, but there's not a ton of red lines. And, you know, my staff recommendation this time is a little different. A lot of times I like to give you just simple bullet points, but I felt like this time I needed to give a little bit more explanation for what we were doing with these changes. And this is kind of was born out of last month's meeting where we talked work plan and work program and some of the things that we're looking at doing when it comes to middle housing, when it comes to additional densities, when it comes to infill development, which the city has been doing for the past 20 years. And specifically, one of the things we've identified and talked about that we viewed as staff views as a priority is our River Cherry Overlay District. So primarily, the purpose of this amendment was to clarify a couple of things in the River Cherry Overlay District, that the parking issue was an oversight. And there was created basically a discrepancy between our standard parking section, which is 2.303, and then the River Cherry Overlay District, which has specified parking reductions for certain uses. One of those uses was for single-family dwellings, but in our parking section, we have a separate category for single-family dwellings that are on private access easements. So the intent was to reduce parking overall in the River Cherry Overlay District as part of the idea that, hey, we're allowing some smaller lot sizes, we're allowing additional development types, we're allowing additional density. So in your packet, in section 2.130 on pages 8 and 9, those are the changes in that section. And so we just simply added the section that specifies single-family dwellings on access easements where they'll be requiring 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit, whereas 2.303 requires 3 spaces per dwelling unit. And the nexus there is a standard home and a standard subdivision requires 2 parking spaces per dwelling, and the RCOD would require 1 parking space per dwelling. So we just reduced it consistent with what was originally intended, but somehow got missed. So that's kind of the first big substantive change that we're bringing for consideration. And I know that parking is always a sensitive issue in our neighborhoods. It's sensitive in the development community, but it is time and time again also identified as a barrier to development of affordable housing, a barrier to using property space to its greatest potential because it eats up area and it costs money. And realistically, we took this move when we went with the RCOD and looked at these parking reductions. The direction given through both our community conversations and at public hearings at both Planning Commission and at Council was that we as a city view that River Cherry Overlay District as an area where we believe that we should allow the market to drive the need more than a prescriptive set of standards. So that's why we're recommending that we reduce that to 2 per unit. It still is more than just 1, because you can't park on an access easement. But we've had a couple of developments where it's actually affected the layout of property where they could have utilized it for some different uses if it weren't for the parking standards. So that's one. And then the other one that we found, which was kind of an on accident kind of deal, we're recommending that we change how we calculate density. And currently what we've said is for density, which is on page 8, and it's in the little sub point, and the little number 1 in brackets, but that we don't allow accessory dwelling units to count towards minimum density for residential single-family zone lots, but we would allow it for medium density or mixed-use lots. And we had a specific development proposal shortly after the River Cherry Overlay District was approved. And we had a small parcel. The developer came in and they wanted to do a 4-lot subdivision. And they wanted to do a 4-lot subdivision where lots would have been larger than the minimum lot size. But their intention was to build out a little small community that was going to have a single-family home with an attached ADU and a detached ADU. So 3 units per lot, creating a 4-lot subdivision for a grand total of 12 units. Because of this density provision, they ended up having to tweak their development plan because they couldn't meet our minimum density requirement with the 4 lots, because there was only 4 houses, and they really needed 5 houses in order for it to meet the minimum density. So it was either request an additional variance, which didn't really have any reason to support it, or squeeze in another lot. And ultimately what it ended up resulting in is they're still, actually met with the developer today who's looking to buy the project. They're still going to attempt to put a house with an attached ADU on each of the 5 lots. So netting 10, well actually it's 9, because when they couldn't redevelop, they ended up keeping the existing house. So it's ending up resulting in 9 total units, versus if we would have had this flexibility built in, we could have gotten possibly 12 units. So I met with my staff, and that's come up a couple different times on small partitioning projects where it can be hard to meet the minimum density on these smaller parcels because you can't actually squeeze enough lots in. But if you can count ADUs as one of the dwellings, it's much easier to meet that minimum. And so we feel that that's appropriate because it really does give more flexibility to the developer to provide those alternate housing types that we've identified that we need more of in Keizer. So that's kind of the first biggest change that's substantive in nature. So before we kind of move on to the other ones, if you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to ask or answer, maybe. I'll try.
Sage Tree. Good.
Okay, sorry, Shane, I missed this the first read through. The footnote 1 there under the table.
Yes.
So why is it changed to maybe instead of are?
So it's an option. You don't like that, huh?
Well, why, I mean, it's not, it's minimum density, so there's no reason there's no reason somebody would say, I don't want you to include it. Because it's a minimum density, right? If it was a maximum density, you know, accessory residential units may be included in the minimum density. It's like, so maybe at their option.
No, you're right.
It works the other way.
Okay.
Not included in the maximum density,
Yeah.
that part's right, but it seems like there would be no reason why they would not include it. And when it says maybe, it's like, well, how do you decide? And, you know, in other words, at their option, but
Yeah.
I think there's probably a reason you did that, and you probably told me and I forgot.
There is, and I don't remember right now.
All right, let's not worry about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer for you right now, Shannon.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't see that until today.
So specifically, we're talking about on page 8,
Oh.
under 2, right?
Yeah, okay, so Shannon, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so the strikeout part that's the R or the maybe, you're right, and maybe I don't need to say maybe. The big piece is we want to make sure that it's not in that, it's not limited to only in the R.
Right, the rest of it all makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know, you're right, I don't know that it needs to say maybe. In my mind, it gave the developer the flexibility to choose
Right.
if they wanted to use it, but you're right, I guess I don't have to say that.
There is no reason why they wouldn't.
Yeah, because it wouldn't
it's
actually matter, because we're not changing the language on the maximum.
Right,
Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying.
so we'll make that R.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
it can stay R, you're correct,
Okay.
my bad.
Okay, so specifically on the parking issue on section 2.130, that's what we're talking about, right?
Yes.
Okay, what are, any discussion, well, any comments from the commission? Nope. Commissioner Watson?
I'll just say that I'm generally very positive about anything that reduces parking requirements, and I know that this is more just bringing RCOD in line with something that appears to have been an error. I'm just happy to be voting on reducing parking requirements.
All right, moving on.
Okay, so then our second section is a super easy one to talk about. It's section 2.316, and it's all red line. So we're just recommending that we get rid of it in its entirety. And not to belabor the explanation too much, but historically, section 2.316, it housed a large chapter for infill development that the city created back in, I think it went into effect in 2000 or maybe 2001. It was one of those big planning projects that was funded by the state. We looked at how can we utilize some of our larger parcels citywide. And so there was this whole chapter. It had different sections for street standards. It had different setbacks, different building types, like what the buildings had to look like, this whole deal. And then after we had that implemented for probably 5, 6, maybe even 7 or 8 years, we ended up kind of folding those standards into the code and said, hey, if these building design standards are good for infill, they're good for everyone. If these street standards are good for infill with a certain number of lots, that's good citywide. And so we actually stripped the infill section, and that was a little bit before my time coming to these meetings, but we basically stripped the infill section down to where it really became just this little chapter that was, the only thing that it required is that if you're on an infill parcel, you submit this kind of pseudo plan that looks at building heights. And if your building heights are significantly taller than surrounding neighborhoods, then maybe you have to provide some additional landscaping or some additional setback issues. And this has historically, for the past 10 years, created conflicts and some problems for developers, because oftentimes somebody comes in and subdivides a property, and then they sell those lots off to a builder, and there's almost these hidden requirements that aren't very obvious. And so they go in, actually I just dealt with one 2 weeks ago, where a new subdivision came in. It's in a neighborhood that is mostly new subdivision, but it was immediately surrounded by there was like 3 big parcels, and it's one of the 3. And so there's these 1960s ranchers that are 16 feet tall on either side, and then one lot on the other side, there's a 33-foot tall sandstone. And so it's very awkward to have to talk to that builder who's come in and paid a designer to come up with plans and go, oh, none of your plans now work, and you've got to spend thousands of dollars to modify them. Initially, when staff was looking at the RCOD, we knew that we wanted to not have infill standards apply to the RCOD specifically, that River Cherry Overlay District, because as a public process, we had gone through and already identified that this is an area that we want to see densification and different housing types. What shifted in Shane's way of thinking, and the reason that I'm recommending tonight that we simply move on from it, is the near future implementation of House Bill 2001, where they've specified that we can't require these reduced heights anywhere in our city for these middle housing types. And so we think that it's kind of time to go ahead and move past that. And the reality is, for us in cities in Oregon, if there's a property owner that has a large property, they have kind of a vested property right to divide their property to the standards that are allowed. And so what we're moving to do is say, hey, we're just going to let the zone drive building height and setbacks so it's across the board consistent throughout our city. So that's why we're proposing to remove that. I think it would be a lot bigger deal if this chapter was robust and had a lot of things in it, but it frankly was kind of a little holding point that has done nothing more than kind of prevent some of those different housing types. For example, if somebody wants to build some narrower lots with zero lot line dwellings, they almost have to go two-story in order to accommodate the square footage that makes sense to pencil. And with the height restriction, you get limited to not put enough square footage on a lot to make it pencil, and so things will sit fallow and not be developed at all. So that's kind of why I moved from saying, oh, just in the RCOD, and then I started thinking about it more and looking at some of our recent developments and went, you know what? I think that it is time that we just simply say, okay, you got a lot, it's big enough to be divided. That developer, that property owner should be able to divide that lot and develop it with a lot that you could build on any other subdivision lot in town. So with that, if you have questions on that, I'm happy to answer them.
So eliminating the section 2.316, the changes there for section 1200 on definitions just eliminates that from the section 1.200, correct?
Yeah.
And then on section 2.432 on page 11, that eliminates that line there under sub E.
Yeah, which is a criteria for both the cottage cluster and the partition.
Okay.
It's because we called out that. So right now, when I write a staff report, we've never actually done a cottage cluster development, but if I have, I do a lot of partitions. But when I write a partition staff report, one of the review criteria is specifically compliance with section 2.316.
Right.
So by eliminating that section, we have to get those references out.
And then the last one is just specifically related to the parcels, 3.107, 07 sub E at the very end.
Yep.
Okay, so they're all related to this specific recommended elimination of the infill chapter.
Yes.
I noticed in the staff report, Shane, and I apologize if I'm not seeing it. No, as I was.
Okay. And then the one other thing I did want to kind of say is that I think that the one thing that Planning Commission does have to consider with this elimination of section 2.316, there is that flip side argument that you could say, hey, that section that's there, it speaks to some neighborhood compatibility and things like that. And that's true. That's what the intent of it was for. Again, as we move forward and have to look at modifying code sections because of state laws where we're no longer going to be able to, essentially we're not going to be able to apply this section 2.316 the way we do right now post June of 2022 when we have to have all of our House Bill 2001 compliant text amendments in place. So in my way of looking at it and based on input that I received from Planning Commission at last month's meeting, I felt like this is kind of one of those pieces that, okay, this one makes sense to go ahead and look at now, kind of ahead of time, so it's one less one we're gonna have to do later. So that was kind of my reasoning behind it. So, and then the other thing I kind of wanted to just acknowledge, we didn't receive any written comments, although I did receive some email correspondence back and forth from Fair Housing Council of Oregon. They are watching text amendments a lot closer, especially in light of House Bill 2001. So when this hit the state system for my 45-day notice for the hearing, I got an immediate email on, I want to know what you're proposing, and I'm like, I haven't even written everything yet. I just put the notice in. I know I'm changing it. I don't exactly know. But the gal's name is Jean, and we had a good conversation on the phone, and I got an email from her today that said, hey, I'm not going to be submitting any written comments. Your conversation really helped. I talked to my board, and we wanted to express generally we're in support of anything that reduces barriers to new development types. So we think you're moving in the right track with what you've proposed. So I just wanted to kind of add that in. Like I said, normally, I print out the email because I thought it was going to be an actual formal, here's my comments, and then I looked at it, I was like, oh, my comments are that I have no comments. So, but I did want to let you know, those are some things that we're having some more eyes on us than we've had in the past when it comes to these things that relate to housing and affordability and middle housing. So, yeah, with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Any comment on basically 2.316, 1.200, 2.432, 3.107? And I'd like to note for the record that Commissioner Keizer got here at 6:15.
I apologize for being delayed. It was poor planning on my part.
It's very kind of you to save that kitty from that tree. Commissioner Grants.
I would just like to say that I support those revisions to the code wholeheartedly.
Wow, a lot of enthusiasm tonight for comments. All right. Are we good with closing the public hearing on this? Any by the ways? Gentlemen?
Did you open the public hearing?
I did.
You need to double check that no one wants to testify?
I was getting ready to. Thank you.
Okay.
Wayne, sir? I don't know your name. I apologize.
That's the mask. That's the mask.
Just here for info. Okay. No by the ways. All right, we will close the public hearing at 6:32. Okay. Let's entertain a motion recognizing the one Scribner, right? Are we calling it a Scribner error on the and or the may?
It's just a Shane error.
So would the motion be as modified or
As amended.
as amended?
Whatever Shannon said. He's right.
As amended is significant. is
As
appropriate.
amended.
It's really hard to figure out why that was important, and I just realized
So I would ask that include all the sections in your motion, please. Don't make me call on somebody.
Nobody? I don't have all the sections written down, son. Sorry.
I'll make a motion. I move that we approve to the council the staff report and code section amendments as presented by staff with the lone revision to the Scribner's error to KDC sections 2.130, 2.316, 1.200, 2.432, and 3.107.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Grants and a second by Commissioner Herb to approve as amended. Do we have to repeat it? Okay.
That's fine.
All right, any discussion on that? No? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimous. One absent. For an 80-something page packet,
Well, it's not something as controversial as chickens.
right. I think Shane just wanted to, looked at it and said, okay, what's the most paper I can send out to freak these folks out? All right, new old business staff report.
All right. So I guess it's kind of next meeting, we'll talk about later. We're still working with our consultant on our housing needs analysis and update. We will have that meeting May 19th, by another agenda item. But one thing I did want to kind of bring to Planning Commission's attention, Councilor Duran and I and others were at I guess it was a presentation. It wasn't really a webinar. We just got to listen to Portland State, the Population Research Center. What was that, maybe 2 weeks ago? 3? A couple weeks? I don't remember. It was a little while back. And the estimated draft population forecast numbers dropped. And they're significantly lower than the last time that PSU did population forecasts for our region. So it kind of stirred the pot with local governments around our region, Marion County. I was on a conference call with the city of Salem, Polk County, Marion County, Council of Governments yesterday, discussing some of the new numbers. It clearly will have a pretty significant impact for our current planning work that we're doing with our housing needs analysis and buildable lands update. The question mark becomes from a policy level and from a local government level as to how much pushback happens, and if Portland State ends up kind of reworking their books. But I think the specific thing that's very telling or interesting is that Population Research Center is essentially looking, the whole state, they're looking and saying our population growth is reducing over the next 20, 30, 40 years out. So much so that as we push out, like they project all the way out to like 2075. And we get to a point, like they show these different charts, where we actually get to a point where our population will start going down, which intuitively it doesn't seem right to a lot of folks. And so there's a lot of questions out there. For us, it's just not great timing because our project for our housing needs analysis and buildable lands inventory update comes due in June. And the numbers will not actually be adopted, set in stone numbers until the end of June. So I will keep you all up to speed as I know more, but I kind of wanted to give everybody a heads up so that if you just, if you're into population projections at all, there's a lot of information out there on Portland State's website right now that show what those numbers are. I hesitate to quantify it because we don't know for sure, but just from looking at it from we'll speak in a little bit of a generalized term. When we did our 2019 buildable lands inventory and housing needs analysis update, we were planning for somewhere in the neighborhood 10,000 new people moving into our region in the 20-year planning horizon. I think it was 9,850 or something like that. With the new population projections, the allocation for Keizer drops basically in half. The intriguing piece is the allocations for Salem are really significant. And so it's going, Salem was also in the middle of doing a huge update with their Our Salem project, which is a big comprehensive plan update, and they're, planning for something like 60,000 new people in the region in the next 20 years. And they've broken it down differently with PSU projections, and it is a lot lower. So they are definitely kind of like, whoa, the flags are raised and concerns are kind of out there now. So I think over the next few weeks we'll find out what happens with that. In some ways, it could be a little easier for us, but it definitely changes changes that ongoing question substantially on UGB expansion and those kinds of things. So I wanted to kind of give you guys a heads up on that. I'd be happy to entertain questions that you have, but I don't know if I can answer them, but I'll try.
So is the current study, is that tied to a fiscal year?
So yeah, the study has to be completed by the end of June because of the way the state funding cycle is.
So I guess the question, I mean, what resources do you have to compel the state to put a moratorium on that date? Because I'm a little concerned about wanting to put something out there with a precedent set on data that is very out of date, because it has a lot of community implications, right? So we put out this study that says, oh, we're expecting, 9,800 people or something within the region over the course of the next 20 years. And this next document comes out like the next month is like, just kidding.
Right.
Right. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm really curious to see, kind of lean on the state a little bit and say, look, we got some information coming down the pipeline that's going to have a significant impact on kind of how we're going to be looking at the visioning of this
Yes.
whole concept.
Yeah, and actually I had, on Monday, I had a Zoom meeting with our consultant and our state DLCD reps, both Kevin and our regional rep, about this exact issue. I found out, we had the little seminar and they hadn't broken down the Keizer-Salem split, and then the number came out, and I think that was actually maybe the night of the council meeting last week that I found out what the numbers actually kind of looked like. And they're still an extrapolation. They don't exactly line up with our planning horizon year because it is a 20-year look, and so they've put out numbers for 2035, 2045, where we're planning for like 2041. So it's in between those, but kind of looking and applying the adjusted annual growth rate. Our consultant has kind of said, I'm real close. I'm not exactly right, but I'm within about 50 people here. So we had a meeting with the state about that exact issue because I have the same concern. I'm like, why would we go through and adopt a new housing needs analysis and finish this work and it's immediately wrong? Like, that makes no sense at all. Like, we need to have it line up with the actual number. So in talking with the state, we believe we have a path forward to make that happen. It could be a little bit weird, but I think that we will be able to address that in hopes. And I think one of the things we'll have to do is we'll have to hold off on adopting that study until sometime later in the summer, when those numbers are actually certified as this is the right number. So we can still have all the work done, but that's kind of what we're looking at doing as our approach. But yeah, I appreciate your concern because I have the exact same concern.
Only 1 or 2% is like, meh, but 50%, that's very significant, in my opinion. Commissioner Saldivar.
Well, do you know what the driving factor is to show the reduce in the numbers?
So they are, and I'm not a population projection guy, Commissioner Saldivar, so like with large grains of salt, take what I'm about to say. But essentially, there's a few different things that they look at when they model population projections. In a simplistic way of looking at it, one of the things that's reducing the overall state population projections is the in-migration numbers. And those have been going down. And that's driven a lot of our population growth in Oregon over the last, several decades. The other thing is birth rates have gone down consistently for quite some time. And that obviously is more people are born, more people are here. And then it appears that in Marion County specifically, we have a higher margin of aging population, and we have less folks moving into the region of the younger population, so less families, less people. And so that's part of what they're looking at as they project out with births and deaths. Essentially, and then there also is a lot of data, I guess, nationwide that when folks get to a certain age, the likelihood of out-migration or in-migration kind of goes away. And so as Marion County is aging, the likelihood is those people stay in the region, and because less people are coming in, those population reductions just continue to happen. So that's a piece of it. The other thing that I believe is apparent, although it's not exactly this way, but with the population projections this round, they've used a component that does look somewhat at land base and infrastructure availabilities, which from a simplistic point of view, it's almost like, oh, well, here's the UGB areas, here's the population that's going to grow just based on the numbers, and then you allocate it accordingly. Which in our region, what was interesting about that is that of the, I think that in the whole Marion County area, and again, these numbers are not right, these are ballparks, I think that we were looking at a net reduction of people in our area versus the 2017 projections of around 60,000 people less that we were going to grow by with these new rounds. The crazy thing is that from an allocation perspective, Keizer's still going to be growing by like almost 5,000 people. But they had pegged the Salem area, not in Polk County, but in the East Salem area, is only growing by like 2,400 people. So their bigger share of the population growth for the Salem folks was in the Polk County region. And Polk County in general got a larger allocation than they got in the last round of projecting. And so I don't know, I feel that it has to have some sort of nexus with where the available lands are. The only thing about that is that if that was truly the case, then Keizer wouldn't be getting nearly as much as we're getting, because we all know that we're really compressed and we have very little available lands left. So I don't totally know how the math is working there, but that's kind of the magic of the projections. So that helps.
That was, my next question was, even the 5,000 number is still something that we have to manage, right? I mean, it's not,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not 10,000, but it's not like we have room for that growth either, so.
It's a lot closer. And I think that will be something that in our May meeting, that's what I think our consultant will probably be spending the lion's share of the time talking about, this population projection impact and what that can look like for our study. I mean, I don't think it's not like we're going to say, oh, there's going to be no need for growth, but clearly our need is going to be greatly, greatly reduced for additional lands. So,
Commissioner Grants? So correct me if I'm wrong, but if we delay finalizing the study and adopting the study, we're required to use this PSU growth projection rate, right?
yes.
Is there any reason to adopt the study prior to that then?
So I get where you're going, and I thought about that. It is not my recommendation that we would do that, because the one thing that has changed in the legislature is right now there's a couple different elements. With I think it's House Bill 2003. We're on a calendared schedule that we have to do an updated housing needs analysis and buildable lands inventory by 2024 for Keizer. But we're in the state's chart indicated that we will be likely adopting something prior to that. One of the pieces that came out in that legislation is with any new housing needs analysis and buildable lands inventories that get adopted moving forward, what also has to accompany them is what's called a housing production strategy. And those have to be created and adopted within a year of adopting your housing needs analysis. One advantage we have is that because we did our housing needs analysis work and buildable lands inventory work in 2019, and that we're viewing this as an update to that work, they've said that if we adopt in 2021, then we would not have to do a housing production strategy, which I think is probably good for us, in that I'm not sure how we get that housing production strategy done within a year with no funding from anywhere. So that's one piece. I think the other piece is that if we moved forward and said, okay, now there's going to be 10,000 people moving into the region, the moment, if we said, okay, we're going to go ahead and expand the UGB to accommodate residential growth, then it's gonna throw us right back in because we would have to update all those studies again anyway. So we'd have to look at that and we'd have to look at employment plans, which are all gonna be driven by that new population projection. So I think my fear is that if we moved forward with adopting a study that said we're gonna have 10,000 new people, and so we have 253 acres that we need, and then we go to actually file a PAPA and pick the fight, the deck is super stacked against us to where it's gonna be, well, the number you're using is completely wrong. It's double what it should be. Go back to the drawing board anyway. So personally, I'd rather us adopt that study with the quote-unquote blessed number because that's going to be defensible moving forward. So, but that probably is, I mean, frankly, that's probably a decision point that's well above a staff grade type of discussion.
And a planning commissioner.
Well, in either scenario,
A
you're caught
lowly.
between a rock and a hard place, right? So you go with the numbers that are now, and you get sent back to the drawing board on it. You go with the new numbers, and they go, well, you're fine, because you don't need this.
Right. And I think one of my concerns is that we have funding now, and if we can figure out a way to get our housing needs analysis and buildable land inventory updated to an accurate level that is what the LCD and the state law says we're supposed to use, I'd much rather see us do that so that as we do planning work over the next 3 to 4 years to address things like housing affordability and, infilling and whatever it is we are working on, that's going to give us a lot better baseline than an out-of-date study that's inaccurate. So that's,
Well,
yeah.
and part of the challenge is whether it's 5,000 or 10,000 population growth, we're still struggling to accommodate either.
Yeah.
So. Commissioner Kelly, you're off a
Also, I
question.
just want to give you guys a heads up because it could become interesting for sure.
Good times. Mr. Johnson, you got anything for us tonight?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, Counselor Duran, welcome. Thank you for being here tonight.
Well, thank you. I really don't have much other than the city council's been busy on items that aren't really fun to talk about. So we've been, so there's really not a whole lot other than the council went on the parks board or the parks tour, and I enjoyed that myself, seeing some parks that I've seen but never been in. So that was kind of a nice thing to get a chance to see. Talking about these numbers, when I was on that webinar with Shane, I just couldn't believe that these numbers were real, with the population, going down that much compared to what we'd all been talking about. So I was definitely going in at the time trying to check out different things to see what the reasoning was behind it. And it's just, it's hard to understand that those numbers are going to be real. But it looks right to me, but I guess we'll see. Other than that, I have nothing else for us tonight.
So, council representative, is supposed to be Commissioner Hostler. He won't be here. I can volunteer for it unless somebody else is chomping at the bit. Jane, have you done one yet?
No, I can do it if you want me to. You
want to come shadow?
Yep.
Okay.
Which one? What?
April
date?
19th.
Okay.
So we'll tag team it.
All right. Thank you. Sounds good.
All right, so the next meeting, so initially, Shane, we talked about doing this next one as a virtual, I think, because that was kind of what the consultant had requested, right? But it sounds like now we've got options.
No, we still don't have options. Because of the size of the group, it was going to be council and planning commission, and because of the consultant, it is unfortunate, fortunate or unfortunate, it will need to be a virtual meeting for that night.
But my agenda gives me options.
I know, agenda live.
PSU provides the agenda.
Yeah, that's not PSU's fault, but Yeah, originally, we thought there might be an option, but there really is not that option. So,
So do we need, since there's not really an option, do we need the sort of perfunctory motion to go to a virtual setting?
Or you can just do it by consensus.
Okay.
If there's no objection, because we can't really take an objection.
I
My
agree.
understanding is the council has already kind of determined this anyway, so
Fair enough. Commissioner Grants?
I move that we meet virtually and do so at council's behest.
So
you
moving
go.
forward, just follow whatever the council's doing?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what we were doing before anyways. All right. So motion to hold our meetings consistent with what the city council is doing. Any second?
Second.
Was that you? Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. All right, I think that is it. I just want to thank you all for taking the time to come out tonight. Shane, as always, great work. City Attorney Johnson, thank you for the input tonight and giving us a fantastic 6-syllable amendment to that. We will stand adjourned at 6:56.